Hello and welcome back to the UK edition. It's Christmas time and we've been to Oxford Circus to see the lights, haven't we? Well, take that walk from Oxford Circus to Regent Street and you'll be on Portland Place. And on the left, you'll find a building, Ambika House. And across from there, 3 trees growing in a huge enclosure on the pavement. Take a closer look at those trees. They tell a remarkable Indian story. Let's hear that story from the one whose story it is to tell.
3 little trees down a street in the heart of London tell a remarkable Indian story that's deeply personal, undeniably commercial, and unavoidably controversial. The trees speak of the triumphs and tragedies of Lord Swraj, who was a successful businessman in London already when Britain joined the EU in 1973, and he now sees it depart. As one who's known every leader through these changes, the story of Britain and its ties made and unmade with the European Union over the past 50 years is a personal story.
I came in 1966 to bring our daughter for treatment, whom we unfortunately lost. That's what, when she lost her, I wanted to stay same place where she had died. This the younger mother of my younger son, unfortunately, 4 years ago we lost her. He will always be missed. This tree is memory of Mrs. Gandhi's visit to our house, as well as also to open an exhibition which I had in 1982 in the life of Pandit Nehru and his contribution to Indo-British relations.
Lord Paul's personal story is tied up closely with the history of Britain and of its relations with India over the past half a century.
There are some homes that tell a story of personal beliefs, of a political career, of values. Here, Lord Swraj Paul's home in Marylebone in the heart of London certainly speaks for him before he does speak with us over a very special cup of tea. Paul Sahab, that's a lovely Nehru jacket you're wearing. Where did it come from?
I wore it especially, Sanjay, because you are an Indian origin program, and this jacket I owe to the memory of a great friend and a great Indian who unfortunately we lost in the beginning or the middle of this year, Arun Jaitley, who was Finance Minister of India.
He inspired you to wear something like this?
He was wearing a jacket like this. I was in his house for dinner, and I just said it's a nice jacket. And as you know, the Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, wears this kind of jacket, and that's where it has become the Modi jacket. So I said, it's a very nice jacket. To my surprise, when I came back to my hotel, there was a tailor waiting for me, and he said, "Sir, I have come to measure you." I said, "What happened?" So he said, "I want to take your measurement for making you a jacket." And I was very touched. I gave my measurements. He brought the jacket. When I told him and asked him how much, he said, "No, sir, Mr. Jaitley has taken care of it. It's a present from him." I was so touched.
Well, that's Arun Jaitley all over. But interesting that I spoke of this as the Nehru jacket and you speak of it as the Modi jacket, which means you moved with the times and I haven't.
No, the Nehru jacket was more the Bandgala coat, because Nehru used to be more formal than that. he wore this jacket, but Nehru's thing. And it was the color, etc., was added by Mr. Modi.
So it's a political color you're wearing.
And he wears all the time. I didn't choose the color, but it's a lovely color.
Happy coincidence.
It's a lovely color.
Yes, it is. It is. And you look absolutely splendid in it.
And it reminds me
Yes.
of a great man
Yes.
and a great friend. He was like a son for me.
But Lord Paul, we are sitting here in, in the heart of London here between Oxford Street and Regent's Park. These are such iconic landmarks. And you are Lord Paul. You are Lord Paul of Marylebone?
That's right.
Which means to see is ilake de Lord hage ho?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
It is. That's how I got that name.
So you're not just lordly, you're the official lord of this area.
Official, I don't know. If I had 1 inch of land, I'll be very rich. But it's certainly an area where I live, and I have lived in this place for the last, how many? 53 years now.
53 years. In fact, your walls speak the history of your living here.
That's right. 1966, when I came and brought my daughter for treatment. That is why I am still here. She was admitted to the hospital. This gives you why I never came to London to work here or settle here. Unfortunately, we had our daughter who was not well, so we brought her for treatment in a hurry. She got admitted in the Middlesex Hospital, which now it's no more there, but it was around the corner. And I had to find a place where I could stay and near the hospital. So we rented the flat and we stayed here. Unfortunately, she died. And then I really was very heartbroken, and I wanted to stay my lifetime where she had died, and that's why I did not move from here.
And of course, Lord Paul has very much more to say. Back to him after a very short break. Welcome back. There are so many ways in which the history of Britain the past 50 years has been his story. Lord Paul again. At some point, Lord Paul, you joined the Labour Party. You were a very active member of the Labour Party. You were particularly close to the Labour Party, if I can recall, at the time of Tony Blair. What took you to Labour? And since you're a Labour man, even though you're now independent, how do you see this divorce between Labour and India in this election gone?
I think it's not. Politics is always of relationship.
Or a breakdown in relationship.
In any country. I mean, I have been a member of the Labour Party much before Tony Blair came into the picture. With Michael Ford, Peter Shore, James Callaghan.
And Jeremy Corbyn, have you ever met him?
I have met him, but much later.
Of course. And do you think that his policies have been responsible for the breakdown between Indians and Labour?
You see, I left Labour Party in this thing 2011.
But speaking as a former member and a current observer,
I feel bad that there is not enough Indianness in the Labour Party.
How did that come to be lost?
Jeremy Corbyn, but I have met, and whenever I have talked to him, he has been very nice.
I mean, he'll be pleasant with you, that's not the question. But why has he taken this policy for which he has paid now a heavy price himself and for the Labour Party? The Labour has lost a lot of Indian votes, and you have 1.5 million or so Indian votes, very huge number in an election like this.
I think, first of all, I don't think we should really look at it that the Labour has lost because of the loss of Indian vote.
Not lost because of the Indian vote, but lost a lot of the Indian vote.
But that they had lost, Sanjay, even in 2017.
Yes,
And
it's been happening over the elections, yes.
And 2015.
But it appears to be the sharpest fall this time.
It has, because the Conservative Party has been working far harder for the Indian vote than Labour did. Labour used to work much harder for the Indian vote. And
Labour has been working hard to lose the Indian vote. The way they've been speaking critically of India, and the way they've been, refusing to speak critically of the extremists from Pakistan.
I am really surprised, and that rather makes me surprised that what the Indians who are still with the Labour Party haven't asked that question.
They've asked the question, but it's been a futile asking.
No, when there's a question and question. You are going to ask a question, you are going to ask a question as pressman. What you want is within the party.
Yes.
If you have a standing, you want to ask the question, and you have to be ability to answer it, and you want the depth of it.
Who is there of standing in the Labour Party who is of Indian origin?
I don't know.
You mean there isn't one?
Yeah, there isn't. So,
And how did that happen?
I don't know. That's what surprised.
But you should know, Lord Paul. You see the whole political scene intimately. You know every player in this scene.
No. You must understand. I am much less active in the politics of the parties. My activity in politics is as a member of the House of Lords, and that too independent.
But you know the leaders, you meet them, and you have seen this scene for a long time. What is the reason? Is it personal for Jeremy Corbyn? It does sometimes seem that way, that he has this hostility towards India.
Whenever I have met him, I found him very civil, very nice, very warm. So I can't say, I really haven't had a chance or even occasion to ask him, Jeremy, what is it which sort of annoys you about These are the questions which only the real members who matter should be asking.
And it seems there is no member who matters.
I don't see any visible one.
So on the other side, it appears to be quite rosy and cozy between India and the Conservatives.
They have, first of all, David Cameron, who was Prime Minister, not my favorite. He worked very hard to win the Indian vote.
Through Priti Patel.
Yeah. And he genuinely worked very hard. He went to every temple, every Gurdwara, you take him. He knew that the Conservative Party did not have the Labour Party. But then...
So the election campaign this time, which Boris Johnson has won with strong Indian support, not that it was only the Indian support that saw him through, but certainly that voted him very strongly and his candidates very strongly. So this was actually begun by Cameron.
I think again we might like to give the Indian vote more credit than this thing it deserves.
Bob Blackman.
In my view, let me put it this way, my own analysis is that this thing, Boris Johnson got the big vote, and this huge vote is because of Brexit. People were fed up for the indecision by the members of Parliament. 3.5 years have been wasted of the country.
Absolutely, but now what next, Paul Saab? Because Well, and of course, there's no suggestion that is the Indian vote and the Indian issues were the issue. This is a relatively small subsect within the larger scene. That was what we were talking about so far as that goes. But Brexit, now it's going to happen. Fine. To that extent, success for Boris Johnson and the Conservatives. But is it success for Britain in the long term? Is it good for Britain?
We shouldn't look at terms of Britain. We should look at when parties go to election, when the leaders go to election, they look whether they are going to win or not win. They couldn't care less for the country.
So are you suggesting that this was a winning move for Boris Johnson? Whether it's good for Britain or not is another matter.
That is decided after the winning.
So now that he has won.
Yeah, so that's why he is now warming up.
Yes.
He made the statement, Mr. Modi has made the statement.
Well, they have made their statements and that's good. But if we are thinking of Britain, speak to us as a very successful, experienced businessman. If Britain has to trade with EU countries on WTO terms, can the economy survive that given the margins and the competition these days?
You must understand, if even Mr. Corbyn, if he had won, he will make that effort to do business. So, doing business with a government requires a very different thinking, and every leader gets briefed on that.
But this time is different. This time it's Brexit.
I think this time, in my view, even British politicians did not realize, except Boris. They are forgetting that Britain was never happy when we joined EU, and since then they have been always this thing picking up faults, etc. Whether the businessmen, oh, these rules in Europe are no good and this or that, all of a sudden the businessmen started talking, oh, we are better off being in Europe. I am a very, for example, pro-Europe man.
You were here in Britain and in business when Britain joined the EU.
Yeah.
What was the environment then? Why were then people saying let's join and then got the decision their way and that way?
If you recall, at that time, a lot of people was very reluctant to join Europe. And whether it's businessman, whether it's ordinary man, everybody has been complaining in some form or the other for 45 years. It's only what is surprising was, and don't forget, 4% majority when we came to referendum is a big majority. We can change Prime Minister with one vote. That is what I said when we had the referendum. I said, I am for being in Europe because this is the greatest thing which has happened in the history of Europe. You have had no wars. As a matter of fact, the person who first suggested that there should be a more Europe was Mr. Winston Churchill. And Europe went for it, and Europe has gained from it.
But are you also suggesting that perhaps when Britain joined the EU, and this is a guess I'm inviting you to make, please, if there had been a referendum then, it may have been for leave even then?
No, we had a similar kind of a referendum and the people eventually voted to join, but very, very reluctant. And it was
how could they have voted and then been reluctant?
Because Britain, especially the businessmen, were not happy having joined because, oh, too many rules, too many this thing.
But was it a referendum just like this?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
1973 or 4. No, at that time the Conservatives wanted to get in and the Labours didn't want it. This time it got the other way around.
But
the mistake which was made, in my view, was by David Cameron. He should not have had a referendum.
True.
He had the referendum to cover his position, and That was the biggest mistake.
But now, post-Brexit,
Yeah.
do you think Britain will succeed? Would this have been a good decision for the economy?
Oh, I think so. On the other hand, there's nothing to stop us from going back to join the Europe. Even 2 years ago, I said in one of my tweets, I said, look, we must respect democracy, and democratic rules. We had the referendum. Both houses voted that we should have the referendum, and they will abide by the decision. It's a pity that they went back on it. We should have come out. Europe was quite happy taking us back if after 5 years, 10 years, even today when we come out, they'll be happy to have us back.
But Lord Paul, thank you very much for chatting with us. We would love to go on, and I'm sure we will pick up this conversation again very soon. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Lord Paul has, of course, so much more to say. We will take up the chat another day, but for now, it's bye from us here on News 18 with the very best wishes for the new year.